Hey guys, and welcome to the newest episode of Be Hero Presents the Bump Card Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, as always, Brian, and with me tonight is my tag partner, Psycho. How are you tonight, Psycho?
I'm doing fantastic. Tired as usual, but other than that, good.
I am right there with you. I have been burning the candle on every variant side of the stick. So I am very, very tired.
Yes, don't burn the tip.
Oh. That was the rule my father gave me before he left. No.
Okay.
Anyhow, so this week we are going to be talking about we're going to be reviewing WWE's Elimination Chamber and everything that's got going on, plus the build-up to WrestleMania. But before we do that, we got to go through our weekly wrestling news. And my lord, what a week in the wrestling world. Why don't you start us off, Psycho?
Well, a couple of sad things right off the bat. So we had a couple of deaths. The first one that I heard of was Ole Anderson. Best known for being part of the Four Horsemen, for being a booker for WCW, being the voice of the Black Scorpion, the infamous Black Scorpion angle in WCW.
Yep.
Yeah, and being known for telling Vince McMahon to F off and his wife Linda. I don't know if you heard that story.
I have not.
Okay, so real quick on that, because we're going to share a couple of memories of each in honor. So, Ole Anderson, I forget where it was at or what function or whatever, but Vince McMahon came up to him and went to shake his hand and whatnot, and Ole wouldn't shake his hand and told him to F off. And so the next time they're around each other, Vince goes up to Ole and says, "I want to, hi Ole, I want to introduce you to my wife Linda." And Ole looks at her and says, or looks at Vince and says, "F you and F her too." And Vince was basically like, "You'll never work in the WWF ever." So, something to that extent. And yeah, so kind of read up on that. It's an infamous story of why you never saw Ole Anderson in Vince's company.
There's definitely a lot of backstory that needs to go onto that.
Yes, of course. There really was, because I mean they had the history of competing against each other and Vince screwing Ole out of time slots and all of that. Like, read up on that. But Ole was part of the Four Horsemen. The original Four Horsemen. And one of my favorite Four Horsemen angles with Ole specifically that I ever saw was when Sting was part of the Four Horsemen, and very briefly, usually he was against them, but he was part of they were all baby faces at the time, and Sting had just won a shot at the WCW or the NWA Heavyweight Championship at the time, and Ole was basically telling him to give up his title shot. He didn't want to challenge Flair, and give it up or else. And Sting, was trying to talk to Flair, who was there not saying anything in the ring. I think it was on a Clash of Champions. And Sting, was like, he wasn't giving up the shot and everything because he had earned it and everything. And they kept warning him and said, "I'm warning you, and then finally said, "You know what? You're fired. You're out of the Four Horsemen." And he's like, and Sting looked at like Flair and was like, "What is going on here?" It's like, talk some sense to him or whatever. So anyway, they jump Sting, and then Flair starts doing a beat down and joining them and beating up Sting, and basically like, "You want to challenge me?" It's like, "You're fired. You were never part of the Horsemen." And it's actually a really great angle. If you watch that segment, go back and watch it. the crowd goes ballistic. It's an amazing angle.
Right on. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely Ole Anderson. He's gonna definitely be missed, especially with the tagging he did with Arn, and a part of the Four Horsemen. Great tag team that they would do. Just crazy to think that where like there's no more Ole Anderson, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In addition to that, the one that also blew my mind was the passing of Virgil/Vincent.
Yes.
Oh, what was his name?
Mike Jones.
Mike Jones. That's right.
Yes.
I was gonna say Michael Johnson. They're like, that's not right.
No.
But yeah, man. Like, I remember watching in the early '90s, watching Ted DiBiase doing everything he did in the WCW or WWE at the time, and watching Virgil do everything. And I actually just recently found out the reason why he was called Virgil and Vincent in those times.
Really? You didn't know?
I didn't know the real reason. So for everyone who doesn't know, when he was called Virgil initially, it was a shot at Dusty Rhodes, because Dusty Rhodes' first name is Virgil.
Yep, Virgil Reynolds.
Yep,
was his name. Yep.
And I didn't know that. Well, I knew the first name was Virgil, but I just didn't put two and two together, right? Mm-hmm. And then later on, when Jones went to WCW again to work with DiBiase, and then of course with the NWO and everything else, he was there as Vincent, and it was a shot back at Vince in the WWE. Just never put one and one together.
You're probably like, Vincent, what a stupid name that is.
Right? Well, like both Virgil and Vincent in my brain sounded like butlery names, so it felt perfectly fine, right? And because
who named their kid Vincent?
It just didn't hit me. Like, I was literally like this old when I realized that thing. I think I learned that today, so it just blew my mind. Like, oh my gosh. So, but
yeah, he didn't have the best run in the NWO. He was just kind of there, right? But one of my favorite Virgil memories was when he turned, or he finally stood up to the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase, and they had just. And actually, this is actually really ironic. It was Royal Rumble 91, I want to say, or maybe it was, I think it was 91. And they had Virgil and Ted DiBiase going up against Dusty and Dustin Rhodes in a tag team match at Royal Rumble, which is actually really funny and ironic. Somewhere that had to be a rib, right? Because the whole nature of the gimmick, and they're going against Dusty, but they lose.
This was Polka Dot Dusty too, right?
Yes, it was Polka Dot Dusty. Yes, and Ted DiBiase ends up, winning the match, but he's upset with Virgil and is still ordering him around, saying, get my belt, and Virgil just kind of looks at him, and Ted DiBiase's like, what are you doing? It's like, I own you and all of this stuff, like he usually did. And I think he slaps him or something like that, or he really degrades him though. Ted DiBiase does to Virgil. And Virgil drops the championship, and Ted DiBiase says, do I need to, remind you, where you came from and what I've done for you and all this? So Virgil picks up the belt, and Ted DiBiase looks at the crowd and gives him that laugh and says, that's right. Like I always said, everybody's got a price for the $1 million. And he turns right in, and Virgil hits him with the belt and knocks him out. And the crowd goes crazy. And Virgil just looks at the crowd, and looks at the belt, the $1 million championship. And just a great moment. And that was probably one of the big highlights for Virgil. But he was so good in that role.
He was. One of my favorite things about Virgil, as both Virgil and Vincent, when he needed to be there, he was there. Like when you needed to see him, you can see him. Otherwise, you didn't see him. He had a great ability of hiding until he was needed, but also like never felt like he was just standing there, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
He was, I guess there's really no better way of saying it. He was both involved in what was going on, but not really involved in what was going on.
Right, and he usually took like the beatings from the baby faces because Ted DiBiase would get away, but they'd always catch Virgil, and he would like whether it was Jake the Snake Roberts DDT on him and putting the snake on him, or Brutus the Barber Beefcake, putting him in the sleeper hole, whatever the case was. Yeah, he would always basically, get the beatdown put on him because Ted DiBiase would always run away to keep his heat.
So there's an unspoken rule in wrestling, right? There are two things that happen in a match. You either get over or you get somebody over, right? Mm-hmm. Virgil was always so good about getting somebody else over, and not even just the people he was working with, but like with DiBiase or in the NWO stuff. Like, and that goes back to what I was saying. Like, he was so good at both being there and not being there because he always enhanced everything that he did without having to be the center of attention. You see that so much where somebody's on the outside, right? Let's say Jericho comes out, right, with Sammy Guevara. Sammy's in the match. He's doing everything in the match, but part of the match, you're going to see they're aiming to see what Jericho's doing. Jericho's got a spot. He's doing a thing, right? Virgil didn't have to have that. Like, Virgil was also there, but he didn't need to be a focus. And unless it was time to take that beating or have that spot that meant more. Like, sometimes you'll see people like do the proverbial knock the guy down in the corner and then the guy in the ring takes the ref away, and then the person's on the outside's going to choke them, right? But those kind of things that just didn't feel like when Virgil would do stuff like that it was you're expecting. Like, you didn't like. He was the perfect prototype for someone that was an accessory to a gimmick instead of a lackey. He always seemed to enhance everything he did with either Ted or with the NWO or everything he did and anything he did.
Yeah, it was. He was such a package with Ted DiBiase, for sure.
So, but both of them will definitely be missed, man. And it's sad to think that these wrestlers we watched when we were younger are passing away.
The more and more as we get older, we're seeing more and more of our childhood, wrestlers that we looked up to or that we watched and we're huge fans of. More and more of them are passing away. And it's sad because it also kind of makes you look at yourself and make you feel old that all these wrestlers are passing away. And Ole wasn't young. He was 81. So
well, Vincent or Virgil was younger. He was 61.
Yeah, exactly.
When he passed away. So, but talking about older wrestlers, and not per se passing away, but makes you kind of, have the feels about what's going on and everything else. Also in the news right now is William Albert Haynes, also known as Billy Jack Haynes, has been not convicted, accused of second-degree murder of his wife. So this was just the other day. Well, let me phrase that. On the 8th is when it happened, but he was actually officially arrested today for the second-degree murder is what they charged him with. So in his home in Portland, there was a reporting of an armed person and shooting at his home, and police get there, and he's armed. Like he's not letting people in. They had like a standoff for a couple of hours until they finally relented. And when they finally got in, his wife Janet, who was 85, had a gunshot wound and had passed away by that point. With attempts of reviving on the way to the hospital, but she'd already passed away. And at some point in that process of the whole standoff and everything else, Haynes himself had some medical emergency. I don't think they released what it was yet, but he had some medical emergency. He actually had to go to the hospital himself. That's part of the reason why it took essentially all month to charge him with the second-degree murder, is because he only just got out of the hospital.
I mean, yeah, that's a sad story for sure.
It is,
and I guess it'll come out.
And Billy Jack Hayes, most infamously was his match from WrestleMania 3. But
yeah, I was going to mention that. Yeah, against Hercules.
Yes, but that's
the main thing I remember him from.
That's the main thing most people do, because he wasn't with the company pretty much right after. I think he was released like within a year after that, if I remember reading that correctly. But he was on the independents all up and down the road. He eventually retired in '96 from wrestling. But yeah, it's just crazy, man. My question that we'll obviously have to see is, are they going to accuse CTE, the brain damage and everything from wrestling and stuff, for some of this? We'll have to see how it goes, but I'm intrigued. I'm kind of intrigued to see what they try, what the defense is, and what the reasoning for this was. The second-degree murder is not a planned murder. It's in the heat of the moment style murder, which means that they don't believe he had planned to kill his wife. So, but
yeah, I guess we'll see on that one. Yeah, kind of crazy news stories this week. We'll end the news portion of this with a crazy story as well. So I didn't know about this until I was watching Elimination Chamber, the show that we're going to cover today. And Michael Cole had mentioned and said that, that he was thankful that the Elimination Chamber, the actual structure, actually made it to Australia, because they had to go a different route to avoid actual pirates. And so I've got the story pulled up here. Let's so it says they had mentioned the unusual situation at a press event on Thursday. It says this is a structure which took over a month to get here. Originally it was supposed to ship through the Suez Canal, if I'm mispronouncing this.
I think you said it right.
I apologize, people. But pirates made sure that didn't happen. So it was sent to Miami. It was then shipped by truck to Los Angeles, put on a ship to Sydney, sent on a train over here to Perth, and now the Elimination Chamber is being constructed as we speak, right behind us in the stadium here in Perth. So they had to endure actual piracy to get the structure to Perth. Yeah, kind of crazy. That's all that I could read on that, but I can just imagine, I don't know if pirates knew what it was or whatnot, because I can't imagine them like actually getting control of the Elimination Chamber structure and being like, what the heck is this? Because it wasn't constructed, it was in parts, because obviously they got it there and then constructed it. But kind of a crazy story. When I heard that, I was like, what? I had to read up on that to see what the heck happened there. But the show did go on as planned.
Right. I'm just intrigued to see like what would have happened if they did get to it. Like, what was their backup plan?
I don't know. That almost reminds me of when in ACW when I was booking it, that we had advertised a steel cage match, and the steel cage it wasn't ready in time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we came up with a story that that Greatness, Brick Alexander and the Assassin Spencer Cage had like, I think we said that they had stolen or had the cage stolen or something because they didn't want to compete in the cage match. And so we ended up announcing that instead they were going to be wrestling in a TLC match against Junior X and Zen. And so we ended up having it. It was a great show and it was a great match. And then we ended up having the cage, ready in time for the next show. But well, kind of, because we were constructing that and getting that to work as the show on the day of the show. So we almost didn't make it for that. So but that's what it reminded me of. They would have had to pivot and come up, although it's a little bit more different when the entire show is called the Elimination Chamber. So it's not like they could change the name of the show. So I think that would have been more glaring than just a stipulation on the show being changed.
Yeah, it would have. I don't know what they would have done with it. I mean, I'm assuming they have like a backup cage, but
yeah, but that still would have been like, what the heck? Like, I don't know how they would have done it. I really don't, because I mean, I guess you could do it Royal Rumble style, where a new guy jumps, or War Game style, I guess, but it just wouldn't have been the Elimination Chamber. So yeah, with the pods and everything. So I don't know. Good. Thankfully, we didn't have to find out.
Nope. Instead, we got the show that we are about to review, and what a show it was.
Yeah, it was a great crowd. First of all, over 50,000. Fans in attendance. First time ever.
Something 90,
yeah, something like that. If you want, know the exact number, I can get to that here shortly. But so the first match, and I'll just go over the main card, not the pre-show match, because there was a pre-show match. Basically just to get somebody else that was an Australian out there to warm up the crowd. Indy Hartwell. But yep. So they start with the women's Elimination Chamber match, which is usually the norm when both the women and the men have an Elimination Chamber. They usually put the women out first to warm up the crowd.
They changed it a couple of times, but not often. I think they did a Rumble once where the men had their first Rumble and then the women did the Rumble at the end. But
yeah, the first one, the first women's Rumble, where they had that. So, and this is for the winner of this would go on to face the winner of the Rhea Ripley and Nia Jax match at WrestleMania. And so Naomi's number 1, and Becky Lynch is in at number 2, are starting the match. And the others are in the pod. We'll get to them as they come out. But yeah, what are your memories of this first part of the match? Anything?
Well, I was intrigued because Naomi being number 2, since Becky technically was number 1, as they call it out.
Yeah, okay.
This is the second time in a row, pay-per-view wise, that she was number 2, because she was number 2 in the Rumble as well.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So they're seeing a ton in Naomi right now. And this was a good showing. Pretty much for every female on here, I think, had a pretty good showing. The opening match was a good, simple match for what it needed to be. Like, they went out and did some interesting things. There was a spot that made me laugh. So Naomi's got this this big booty spot, because there's no better way of saying it. where she normally does it where she goes for an up and over. So she gets shot into the corner, grabs the ropes, jumps back, puts her feet on the shoulders, and smacks the opponent into either her butt or into the turnbuckle. Right, usually into her butt. Like he hits the butt and then like does the butt rub and stuff like that, and then hits the turnbuckle with it. Well, she did that, but with the cage, and it didn't work well. Like it didn't look great the first couple of attempts they did, but the last one they finally got the timing or whatever. And of course, Cole and Corey Graves, who was the announcers for the night, did a really good job at covering it by saying that Becky was trying to block, and then the last one she didn't block it. But it was such an interesting spot, which is kind of like the thing of the night. Like the whole show almost was kind of just like, oh, that was interesting.
Yes,
for me at least.
Yep, and then number 3 was Tiffany Stratton, who was really over in Australia. Like they were
like
super over. Like I wonder if they wanted her to win, because it sounded like it, because she was a big time favorite there, where the crowd was chanting for her and cheering everything she did and booing everybody else.
When later in this match, when she gets taken out by Liv gets a BS boo from the fans.
Yeah,
but not BS, but the full word. Like it was quite interesting because Liv's also like such a beloved character, but they just love Tiffany Stratton, and she's actually on that short list of athletes who weren't wrestlers on the indies who learned to wrestle in the WWE system, but has done really well because she was a college level gymnast.
She was actually for Team USA Gymnastics, and she has some medals and everything too, but it was more, I looked her up and everything because like my girlfriend is big gymnastics fan and everything, and so I asked her because I looked up her real name and everything, was like, do you know who this is? You know, because she would know, and we found out that it was for the trampoline gymnastics, so it was a little bit different.
It's just like wrestling, everybody starts on the trampoline.
Exactly. But I was actually really impressed with her in this match. She did like the handspring elbows and hit them really well.
It's like one of the best ones I've seen for somebody actually hitting them with it.
Yeah, because sometimes it looks sloppy. Yeah. A lot of times it looks sloppy, or they barely graze them, and you're like, I don't know. But she hit, like, even her backflips into it and everything, it was really done well. Like, I could tell she was a gymnast.
Yeah. She also does a dive off the top of the one of the pods at one point. That looked really good.
Yes, she does. She did, she did like a shooting star right out of it, basically.
Did she?
If I remember correctly.
I thought it was like, no, it was a swanton, because she does a swanton.
No, it was a moonsault, right?
No, she does a moonsault, but that's not what she did in this. She did like a swanton off of it, off the pod on everybody.
That's it. Okay, swanton. Yeah. I knew it was something.
Yeah, eventually after you go through like the whole 2K like 2024 list of movesets, you'll eventually get there.
Yes, exactly. She did something spectacular.
But she had a really good showing in this.
Yes. And Liv Morgan's out next. And she basically sends Stratton into the sides of the pods over and over. And she got a code breaker for a near fall on Becky Lynch.
Yep.
And let's see here, the Naomi was actually the first one eliminated.
Yep.
By Liv Morgan, I believe. No, Stratton. Sorry, Stratton rolled up Naomi. Raquel Rodriguez is in at number 5. and she was going through something. Did you hear the commentary that she was like lucky to even be in the match? That she wanted to compete though.
Yep. Yeah. So she has a skin condition, not eczema, but something in that same like vein of something. And she was having this massive flare. It's actually also why on Raw she didn't have makeup on, is because it was aggravating that. But she's very pretty without makeup. Like she's not hot per se, but she was very pretty without her makeup on. And but yeah, she had a flare up like really bad, and I can't remember what it was called, but it was really giving her problems. I was surprised though that Raquel Rodriguez ended up being in this match, because to get into this, she had to win a battle royal, and I thought this was going to be the end for Jade Cargill to get into this match, because we did the one spot with Jade in the Rumble, and then we haven't seen Jade at all on TV or anywhere since then.
I don't think it would have been good for her to be in this unless she was winning it, or coming in second at least, because if you have her enter it and she doesn't, if she's not one of the last couple, right? I think that kind of kills her a little bit. So I don't think. I don't think this would have been a good spot for her.
I disagree, actually. I think that the way that they used Raquel in this is exactly the way I would have used her, where they had, several of them team up against Raquel to try and get her out. She ended up being the third to last. But they did it in a boom boom spot for the finish as we get there. And I think that would have been a good way to have it with Jade and play Jade up as well, because it still puts, in this case, Raquel, but it would have done the same thing with Jade, over, because, she's still super powerful, super strong. They just lucked out because they worked on as a team against her, and then they caught her just right. Like, there's a way to sell it where it's still putting over Raquel and or Jade without bearing her and having her be second to last or winning it.
Yeah, and she was actually in this for quite a while. I was actually really surprised with that, because I was like, I thought, with her condition and everything, and she was going to tough it out and compete, that I thought that, okay, she'll be out there, but she won't be in long, that she'll come out, maybe even the last pot I thought was a possibility, and then she'll be in for a couple of minutes and get eliminated. I was actually really surprised that they had her come out at number 5, so not last, but and then they had her in for quite a while. And she had a great showing, actually, showing some power moves and everything. They had Bianca Belair come in next at number 6, and she put Stratton back in the pod before cleaning house. And Belair was really good here.
Yeah, and I think I said Raquel was third to last. I'm wrong, actually. That's Belair's third to last. I remember.
Right. Yeah. There was a really funny spot, by the way, where Liv Morgan actually eliminates Tiffany Stratton, and like you said earlier, the fans did not approve of Jet BS and everything. But Liv Morgan was basically, because Stratton, has this catchphrase where she says it's Tiffy time. And Liv Morgan, I don't know if you heard, but she says it's Livy time.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was great.
I thought the spot I thought you were going to say. So there's a spot where Liv is on top of a pod. Raquel is across the top rope, like laid out across the top rope. And you have Becky Lynch and Tiffany Stratton both climbing up either side of the pod. And as they're both about to get there, Liv jumps off and gives a seated senton to Raquel on there. And as that happens, that's right at the same time where Becky and Tiff both are like watching in amazement that she just jumped off and did that. Like they had this whole pause moment, and then they looked at each other and started fighting. I thought that was a good spot. And I thought that's one you were going to go with.
Well, that's why I have you here, fill in the gaps. And then Belair would eliminate Rodriguez with her finish, the KOD, which she had to really power up to get that and hit that. So that leaves us with Bianca Belair, Becky Lynch, and Liv Morgan. And they had a nice, they had a good sequence with all three of them in there. It was pretty physical. They did Becky or Belair went for the 450, but Becky Lynch or Morgan actually put her feet up, I believe, and then she countered the KOD from Belair and hit a code breaker on Becky Lynch, and Belair goes for her finish on Becky Lynch, but she kind of like lands on her feet out of it, and then so Liv Morgan rolled up Bianca Belair for the pin, and basically walks right into the manhandle slam from Becky Lynch and gets pinned to finish the match. It was actually a really quick sequence there.
It was a good spot too. Like the whole scenario worked out well.
Yeah, and I thought this was a good opener. I really did. And I wasn't surprised that Becky Lynch won. And so it was it sets up WrestleMania really nicely, which we'll get to. But yeah, Becky going to WrestleMania again. So
yeah, I'm excited. I think it's gonna be a good match between her and Rhea. Spoilers.
You
not really
like Michael Cole. So I don't know if you noticed, but later in the show, I had to like, it gave me almost a pause moment, like a double take, because Corey Graves says, basically said Bianca or Becky Lynch won the Elimination Chamber. She'll be facing Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania. This was before Rhea Ripley versus Nia Jax, and I had to be like, okay, and I was listening. I was like, did I miss that match? Because I didn't know they were main eventing yet. I was like, did I miss it somehow? I was like, or did he just really mess up, or did I hear him correctly? And then later on, Corey covers it up. He was like, so I just got texted or messaged by Nia Jax, and she says that, or she's very upset that I said Rhea Ripley, because she's going to be the one facing Becky Lynch. And so he basically was apologizing and said it was a slip of the tongue or something like that. And it's like,
he was walking it back.
Yes, he totally was. It's like, uh-oh. If Vince was still there, he'd be getting an ass chewing.
Oh yeah.
As opposed to what else Vince does with his butt. But
so before you jump on, like, there's something that's just making me laugh thinking about it.
Okay.
I know you don't watch the weeklies, but have you been keeping up with the stuff with Judgment Day and R-Truth?
I hear things here and there. I don't think I really heard about this past week.
So they were having an 8-man this past week, where it was Judgment Day against R-Truth, The Miz, and DIY.
Mm-hmm.
And that's due to the week before, Judgment Day assaulting Truth after a match with JD McDonough, where DIY comes and does the save. And in that part, the DIY, when they did the save, our truth is in the back with him. He goes, "Hey, thanks guys. I appreciate you so much for saving me. I mean, man, I can't believe it. I was saved by DX." And he goes, Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels points to Johnny Gargano and goes, and the cerebral assassin Triple H, and then points to Tommaso Ciampa. And then he keeps it going, right? With this on the 8-man talking about how they're Regeneration X instead of Degeneration X and stuff like that. And it was just kind of making me laugh. And they even do a suck it spot in the match, in the 4-way, which was great. It's so good with the R-Truth stuff. But my part that made me laugh, because it just popped back in my head, is R-Truth's TikTok. It's so funny. But he is standing talking to somebody in a doorway. And he's like, "Oh man, Johnny Gargano, so glad you're here. I can finally talk to you. Like, I love what you and Tommaso Ciampa are doing at DIY. Da 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 da. And I think you're gonna be like the next Shawn Michaels." And boom, 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 like just giving a bunch of praise. And then it pans over, and the person he's talking to is actually Shawn Michaels. Sorry, I don't know why that popped in my head out of nowhere, but it surely did. And I needed to share it. Dude, if you're not watching the weekly stuff, even NXT, it is worth watching right now. WWE cannot be any hotter.
Speaking of which, I'm all ready for when Raw goes to Netflix. I've got Netflix now, and I didn't have it before. So, now, granted, I mainly got it so my son can watch Super Mario Brothers movie, but because that's the whole reason we got it. But I was like,
Wasn't that on Paramount?
Netflix. It might be on.
No,
it might be on Paramount too. I didn't.
It was on one of those before Netflix. It dropped like a while ago. That's how I watched it.
Yeah, I don't know.
But it wasn't Netflix.
It's Netflix now, because that's the one we searched. And it was like on Netflix, and I was like, okay, we'll get it. I mean, Raw's going to be on there, at the end of the year anyway, so might as well. So,
right.
So then I might actually watch Raw. If I can.
Dude, I'm telling you, man, it's worth it. It is worth watching right now. So good. But let's proceed.
Yes.
Now I totally tangented us away from everything.
Yes. So, speaking of the Judgment Day, they're next. We've got the tag team title match, Judgment Day against New Catch Republic. Corey Graves, when the New Catch Republic was coming out, Corey Graves says, "Sounds like a place where my wife buys her clothes." It's really funny. His wife being Carmella.
Of course.
And Dominic Mysterio had major heat here. He basically cuts a promo at the beginning of the match, and the crowd is so loud that you can barely hear Dominic speak. It's insane. Yeah.
It goes on too during this match. It's worse.
100%. And this match, it was all right. I feel like it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be. It's sloppy at times. I don't know what it was, but it seemed to me like Pete Dunne and Tyler Bate, it seemed like they were a little off. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was just me, but it didn't. I was really looking forward to this match, and it didn't really do it for me. It felt like a Raw match to me. It did not feel like a pay-per-view quality match.
Yeah.
That they put on. But I mean, do you have any highlights of this match that you remember?
Well, the one I kind of alluded to in a minute, I'll talk about. But I think the biggest problem with this for Bate and Dunn being together is they're still new together, right? They kind of just jumped them right into a tag spot and got them to this match. It didn't feel like they really earned it. and as such, they're not as crisp together yet. They've tagged in the past, but it just felt like they were out of sync. I think on certain things, it just didn't feel as clean as it could be. With that being said, they had some fun spots. They did a lot of tag spots that they would do as individuals. So Tyler Bateman or Tyler Bate, so excuse me, has a spot where he does the point up and then the left jab strike. And him and Dunn did it together, so they both pointed up and strike, but their timing was off, so it looked awful. It didn't look awful, but it looked off. They had, but they had individual things too. Like they had the joint manipulation for Dunn. They had the big aeroplane spin for Bate. Like the rebound clothesline for Bate. Like they had a bunch of small stuff like that. They did a Inzy spot in the corner, which was very a la the Bucks at one point. And then the Judgment Day just felt like the Judgment Day. Like I had no care in this match, honestly, for anything about it. Like I watched it, but I wasn't really paying attention to it, which says a lot. That being said, what I alluded to earlier with Dom.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a spot where they hit their double move, or their finish, which is a Tyler driver or butterfly, or not butterfly, a tiger driver, but they do it as a double driver. So one stands on one side, one stands on the other, and kind of does like a each grab a single arm and pull them up almost like a clutch bomb, and then power bombs them. Mm-hmm. That's their tag finish. So they hit that, go for the pin, and then they put Dom puts the foot up on the apron or pulls him out or something. I can't remember. He cheats to stop the pin.
I think it's the foot on the rope.
Yeah. And tries to hide and is like looking. He's like, I'm so smart. But Bates right there on the ground next to him. He's like, I'm smarter than you. Boom, boom, boom. And Bates like, hey, ref, he straight down here. He cheated. He did the foot thing. And so the ref eventually, does the big wind up.
Yeah. It was very exaggerated.
Yeah. And the fans blew up on it, right? Mm-hmm. But they end up, the whole front row, as they're cutting across, they all give him the finger. Every single member of the front row gives him the finger. But you never see it because Paramount, not Paramount, Peacock, ends up actually cutting the video feed for 10 seconds so that you can't see it. Even though it's a pay-per-view with TVMA on it, mm-hmm. They went ahead and made the decision to cut it. So it wasn't even WWE that did it. It was Peacock that did it. Cut it for 10 seconds of the flipping off. And then later on, shortly after, but later on, the crowd starts saying something obscene. Because you never get to hear it because they cut the audio for 10 seconds. And again, it was Peacock that did it. But that was the biggest thing out of this match. And sadly, it was the technical problems I remember from this match more than anything else.
Yeah, it was Dom's over as a heel. The crowds do not like Dom. Or they love to hate him. I don't know. But that's pretty much it. I mean, obviously, Judgment Day wins. It was a decent finish, too. You get the double choke slam from Priest. And then Finn hits the coup de grace to Pete Dunne to retain the titles. So right after this, you have the Grayson Waller effect, but Austin Theory is out first to insult Australia, basically. When Grayson Waller comes out, he gets a monster ovation because he's from Australia. And he's majorly over with this crowd, but Austin Theory is not. Mm-hmm. So it's weird. It's weird because every time I liked what Grayson Waller was doing here, I did not. Austin Theory just does not do it for me. I'm like, get this guy off my screen. I can't.
They don't really have like they're not really giving him a good like showing of anything. They're not really writing him anything good with any of this. And like the whole bit with him towards the end of this, like it totally feels like someone said, "All right, now go out there and mock The Rock."
Yeah, it was very cookie cutter. It wasn't it wasn't very inspired at all. Something that you would see on a Raw.
Yeah. And even that, like, you look at the way he's doing it too. Like, he doesn't even want to do it.
Right.
Like his heart's not in it.
Mm-hmm. Like Grayson Waller, it's a weird dynamic because you've got this team or whatever where Grayson Waller's like really entertaining, and then you've got Austin Theory, who's the blandest creator wrestler you could ever come up with. You know, like he's generic wrestler 101. I don't know.
It definitely feels like that's the way they're having him go too. Like when I watched him in NXT and when he was first coming up to the main roster, and they were letting him kind of do what he wanted. Like I saw a lot more in him, but now it's kind of just such a bland thing. It's like they don't know what to do with him.
Mm-hmm. Well,
they're not really giving him anything to do.
He was Vince's guy, and now Vince is gone. So that's kind of what happens, I guess, because Triple H is going to push, who he wants to push. So
it does totally feel like he's in the doghouse or just being Vince's guy, though, right?
It very well could be.
And H of all people understand that from the curtain call, but I guess we'll just have to see what they do with him if they do end up doing anything with him.
Yeah, so we have Seth Rollins come out, and they do really long entrances here, by the way. So Seth Rollins comes out, they do his whole song, and he really milks it, has the crowd sing it over and over again. And then Cody Rhodes comes out, and it's a really long entrance. Although, thankfully, I don't mind the long entrances here just because, like, I like both of those entrances. But they both are stars. And so they come out, and Seth's big thing, is that he's days away from being cleared to wrestle. And so he'll, he's saying he'll be fine for WrestleMania. They tried to get him, to, say who he wanted to win the Elimination Chamber to face him, but he didn't really bite on that. And then Cody says, he's got an announcement too, and he challenges The Rock to a one-on-one match. At some point. But then Seth says, it'll never be a one-on-one. So, I'll be, I'll help you fight this battle, basically. Which makes me wonder, are they going to do a one-on-one match with Cody and The Rock on night one? Are they going to do the tag match? I think they're probably going to do the tag match on night one and have Seth face, the winner of the Elimination Chamber on night two, and then have Cody and Roman main event night two. I think that's what's going to happen. Which will be,
if that's the case, Seth hadn't the winner of the Elimination Chamber. We'll have to start the show off.
Not necessarily
on night two.
I don't think so.
They need that distance. I think they need a good distance between them.
I mean, you could do it mid-show. I don't know. I don't think you have to open it with it, but I don't know what the rest of the card's going to be. We can discuss that momentarily.
Well, assuming that the tag match is the main event of night one,
right?
Then what they'd have to do is probably semi-main night two with Bayley and Io, because Rumble you win a main event spot.
Yeah, I mean they've had the winner of a Royal Rumble like be the opener challenging for the title too. They've done that.
I mean, it's true.
So I could see them opening with a Bayley versus Io. I really could. I could see that being an opening match. They just haven't really given a lot to Bayley, that whole story. Like Bayley's basically an afterthought. She wasn't at the she wasn't at the WrestleMania press conference, even though Becky and all these ones that weren't even in the main events yet, they were being featured, but Becky wasn't even mentioned. They did the whole Elimination Chamber press, basically press event, and Bayley wasn't really featured. She's really getting the short end of the stick. I've never seen someone win a Rumble and be talked about less.
Right.
So she needs to win this, because otherwise it's a complete burial. But that's another story. So yeah, do you think they're going to do the tag match, or do you think we're going to get that one-on-one with Cody and Rock?
I don't know. Like, if there was a bigger pay-per-view between, I would say it was definitely getting the one-on-one. I can't imagine they would have The Rock have a match on SmackDown.
No.
But they didn't expect to see him in Salt Lake either. So
yeah, do you think they would do one-on-one match on night one with Cody? I don't think they do, because they'd have to have Roman wrestle somebody else too to make it fair, I would think. Because why would you have?
No, they'd be totally fine having him not have it fair. Like, yeah, it's because it's more
stack the deck, basically.
Yeah, it's more for him to go. Like, it's making it more of an investment for that win, right?
Yeah, I guess that's true. And they could even have it be Rock, ordered it to be the night before WrestleMania because he's on the board, sort of thing. Yeah. He could override Triple H. I wish Triple H could still have another match, because I think right now that match would be pretty hot with the crowd, is Triple H versus The Rock. The battle of authority, basically. And it'd be a different dynamic. Rock is the heel and Triple H is the babyface. That'd be a much different dynamic that we haven't really seen.
It's true.
So that's really all that happens in that Grayson Waller effect, really. I mean, other than, the heels getting beat up right after.
Singular heel.
Yes. So Austin Theory gets beat up, because Grayson doesn't get beat up, does he?
Nope, not touch.
He just basically watches it happen, which was awkward. And then does he just leave?
He stays in the back and kind of stays in the background as the hell happens. They do end up having a match on Raw between Waller and Grayson, talking about how he assaulted his buddy during his show and all this stuff.
Yeah, it was also a weird dynamic of with like Grayson Waller being all pro Australia, like this is my home and everything, and Austin Theory like insulting Australia. You'd think that they would be at odds over that. It's just weird. Mm-hmm. I don't get it.
The way they're playing it too lately, I almost feel like they kind of want to do this tweener base gimmick for Grayson and have him and Waller, or him and Austin Theory.
That would be a good WrestleMania match, a good mid-card WrestleMania match. I think Grayson Waller would get over as a babyface too.
I think so. His TikTok's hilarious. Like, he's blowing up on TikTok right now, with a lot of the way he is. Especially the stuff he was making jokes about with Taylor Swift is so funny.
Nice. So now we've got the men's Elimination Chamber match.
I would breeze through that card. I would just breeze through that card.
Yeah, we did. That's okay though. Sometimes. I mean, it was really a 4-match show anyway. So there was literally 4 matches. So now we've got this is for a shot at Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. Drew McIntyre and LA Knight start. And this was a good couple of men to start the match. They did all right, got the crowd into it. I believe that LA Knight, smashed McIntyre's face into a pod, and Kevin Owens comes, a
Couple
couple of
times.
times. Kevin Owens comes in next, and Owens was pretty good in this match. Actually, I liked him a lot in this match.
Yeah.
They had Kevin Owens doing a code breaker to McIntyre. There's a lot of code breakers on this show. And let's see here. They did Knight and Owens tried to do a double superplex on McIntyre, but McIntyre cross bodies both of them down. Bobby Lashley's in next, and goes right after McIntyre, and they do a suplex on the cage floor. And then Randy Orton's in at number 5 and hits a really good power slam on Kevin Owens, hits the hanging DDT onto the cage floor on Kevin Owens. And Bobby Lashley spears LA Knight. Let's see here. Logan Paul's in next, and the crowd was really not liking. He had a lot of heat. Logan Paul did with this crowd.
Did you see the videos of what he was doing while on the pod?
He was doing messages, right? That he was writing on the pod, or
so he brought a Sharpie in, and on the pod he draws a couple of horns and is standing under the horns. Like, oh yeah, this is what you guys think of me, da 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 da. And then he writes Kevin sucks as Kevin's being beaten up, and then he draws a fat stick figure and says actual proportions for Kevin Owens and stuff like that.
Nice. Yeah. Then they have Bobby Lashley spears Kevin Owens basically.
You're skipping so much.
I am. Hit some of the highlights here. I'm the color guy. I'm not the play-by-play guy here.
Okay. There's a lot of stuff that happens that doesn't really affect a ton of stuff, but there were, all right spots. But the important one that you skipped, 2 important ones you skipped, right off the bat. The draping DDT that Orton hits onto the floor causes Orton to hurt his back, which is a call they do for the rest of the whole thing. Orton sells the out of his back for the rest of the match. Everything he does, every time he takes a bump, he's down because it's killing his back, right? He ends up going for an RKO later in this, and when he lands, it kills his back, right? He does a great sell job on this, and they're doing it to tie into his surgery he had, which was on his back, and stuff like that. They worked out so well. Also, everybody's down as Logan Paul is getting ready to come in. Like the timer's coming in, boom, 5, 4, and you look around and everybody's down. And then it gets to 2, and as it's about to hit 1, the camera angle worked out perfectly. Right then, you see Kevin Owens pop up right at the door where he was about to. Logan Paul's about to go through, like open to go through, and so Logan freaks out. Like, they had this great standoff moment. It was great. So Logan's freaking out. So he's trying to close the door, and it's not where it's not closing because they're fighting. Or Kevin's fighting to open it, and eventually Kevin wins the fight and starts attacking him inside.
He does beat the crap out of him in that pod.
Yes, and then he closes the door behind him and just continues to beat the snot out of him, and then tries to throw him through the pod door that they're out there. It doesn't do it, so he opens the door, grabs him, and throws him through an opposite pod, and explodes it. And then shortly after that, that's when Kevin gets speared.
And it's actually and then Drew McIntyre hits the Claymore kick on Lashley, and it gets the pin. What
Skipped another part. So Bobby, before all that happened, so he hits Kevin with the spear, but he kind of does this roundabout thing where he's beating up a bunch of people. Bobby's actually working on an injury that he has when he was going up against Last Testament, AOP, and Karrion Kross over the last couple of weeklies, where he's got an arm injury. So he's constantly trying to go for the hurt lock. Right, and just can't do it, so they whack out his elbow and hurt him down, right? So, but he ends up going and just like destroying everybody. He hits this amazing spine buster on Drew McIntyre. Drew gets up so much air. So Bobby does this one-handed spine buster and gets him up and brings him back down. And Drew gets so much air. He's holding Drew McIntyre, who's like 270 pounds, above his head, like with one arm, and then slams him down. Hits a lot of other people with spears and everything else. And then spears the ever-living shit out of Logan Paul into another pod. Like, Logan eats the whole thing standing. He doesn't bump off of it at all. He eats the whole thing and goes right through. It was probably one of the gnarliest spears I had ever seen. And then he grabs is it LA Knight? I think they're working like LA Knight. He's trying to put LA Knight in a hurt lock. LA Knight's fighting out. Boom, boom, boom. And then he goes to grab him again, and that's when he gets claymored by Drew, and goes out. And he's the first one out.
Yeah, I believe that's the case. So Bobby Lashley's eliminated, which is, I think, is fine, because like he's probably the one that I thought would not win the most, you know. So, LA Knight's about basically gives his BFT to Orton and then another to McIntyre. And then AJ Styles runs in through the open chamber door to unload on LA Knight with a chair. Hits the Styles Clash onto the chair. And then McIntyre picks up the pin on LA Knight to eliminate him. So setting up, looks like they're setting up AJ Styles versus LA Knight at WrestleMania.
Yep.
Which should be a fantastic match.
Yeah, I'm all here for it. I did laugh, though. Somebody tweeted out, like, AJ Styles flew all the way to Perth, Australia just to go hit somebody with a chair.
Yes, I think I saw that too. And I was like, yeah, that checks out. It wasn't Pirates, it was AJ Styles,
right?
And let's see here, Kevin Owens hits some cannonballs in the corner onto McIntyre and Orton, and then he hits the Swanton for a near fall on Randy Orton. And then he goes for one on Drew McIntyre, a swanton, but McIntyre gets his knees up, and then Drew goes for the Claymore, but Kevin Owens hits him with the pop-up powerbomb, and then hits a stunner on Logan Paul. Randy Orton gets back up, gets super kicked, only to reverse the stunner from Kevin Owens into the RKO, and Kevin Owens is pinned. Which I find interesting that they gave that to Randy Orton, but just interesting. And then let's see here. So Logan Paul sent Randy Orton into the turnbuckle, and then got crotched up top. And so Paul takes out some brass knuckles again, and is really showing it to the crowd, letting them see, that he's about to do that. And then turns right into an RKO out of nowhere, really, from Randy Orton, which was a great looking spot. And Orton gets the pin, eliminating Logan Paul, which was awesome. And then we're down to Orton and McIntyre, and let's see here. Drew's going to go for the Claymore, but Orton collapses, so he can't really hit it. And then Orton pops back up with an RKO. And then before he can cover and get a pin, he runs right into Logan Paul there to knock him out with the brass knuckles.
He does a great sell on that too, where he just does like collapse.
Yes, it was really good. And McIntyre, who's really pretty much knocked out, just kind of, covers him barely and gets the pin. So Drew McIntyre gets it. And so it looks like they're setting up Logan Paul and Randy Orton, which should also be an amazing matchup because Logan Paul can get that heat and Orton's great at all of that. And so that's going to be an amazing match. If you really think about these matches they're setting up, WrestleMania looks to be stacked, like, for both nights.
There's also, too, because it's not brought up here, but I'm going to spoil a little bit on Raw, is Gunther doesn't currently have an opponent for WrestleMania with the IC thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like 4 people who are kind of in that realm of possibility of it. And the rumor is that they might be either doing a 4-way on night 1 to determine number 1 contender for night 2 for it, or they're going to be doing some kind of tournament for that, and that's going to include Sami Zayn, Miz, Chad Gable, and one other one. I can't remember who the other one was. Shinsuke probably, or Bronson Reed. I think it was the other one that was.
If it's those guys, it's got to be Sammy.
Chad Gable's over like Rover right now too, and he gets called out. Like Gunther calls out all of them in a promo on Monday about who should be my opponent, and then calls each of them out. And the crowd actually blows up louder for Chad Gable than they do for Sammy.
Yeah, but we've seen that. I don't know. I mean, and it was good.
The story wise too, they're bringing it back a little bit. Like Chad Gable had a pretty good promo with Adam Pearce about it shortly after that part. So I'm intrigued to see what happens either which way. Like this WrestleMania is like the whole joke about WrestleMania is the biggest WrestleMania. WrestleMania XL is gonna be the biggest. It's not really a joke. It's gonna be huge. Huge.
You know who Gunther needs to face? Honky Tonk Man.
Honky Tonk Man.
That's right. It's like he's already broke his record. So did you hear that Gunther just now has surpassed Pedro Morales for the longest of like days as champion through any of the reigns? So he's held the championship now longer, not just in one reign, but more than anybody else has held that championship. That's insane.
Yep.
Gosh, if we weren't finishing other stories and everything like that, Gunther versus Roman with both their streaks on the, that would be amazing because it's weird.
Well, and he's had one pin, or not one pin. He's had one official loss in a match of any variety, in that whole run since he's been called up, and that was a count out loss to Chad Gable. That's it.
Yeah, I would love to see Gunther versus Roman, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know what we're going to get. I do know that we're not getting Gunther and Brock. So
no, we're not.
So yeah, Drew against Seth.
Yeah, which is what they were teasing to, but I have a feeling I know the finish of this match.
Okay.
Seth is retaining.
Okay.
And Drew is losing due to interference by your boy, CM Punk.
I don't think he'll be ready to be physical.
Or the other one that's actually been talked about as of today as an opportunity. Currently, Drew has no contract after WrestleMania. Drew cut a promo this week, sitting down cross-legged in the middle of the ring. Are you seeing where I'm going with this?
I do. Continue.
The current thought that's out there right now by some people, and I'm actually all here for it if it does go this way, is he's winning it and he's going home for a month, a la Punk, and doing the same thing. And then that way that they're building to a story where Punk is like eventually him and Punk are going to run into each other, right? I would like to see a story. I don't think Punk will be ready in time by any means.
No, he's out like 6 to 8 months is what they're saying.
Yeah. I would have loved to see it, though, that Punk coming back and say, like, Backlash.
Mm-hmm.
And so Punk ends up, like, so Drew leaves, and Punk ends up winning the tournament of some variety to crown the new champion.
The interim champion?
Yeah, the interim champion, and he comes back and goes against him. Ties into what Punk did with John Cena, and it ties into AEW.
That's funny. I could definitely see,
but I do see Drew winning it and doing the whole like Punk thing.
You just said Seth would retain. Did you not?
I said I can see this, but I do believe Drew's going to win it. I'm saying I could see this where Seth retains by interference.
Oh,
but I expect to see Drew winning and doing a Punk, or say he's going to do a Punk and then doesn't do it because he's better.
Here's the thing: Punk's not going to interfere in the match to help Drew lose, because he has issues with Seth too. So I don't think that would make any sense, and he's not ready to get physical because they can't pay it off right now. I could definitely see Drew versus Punk at SummerSlam. I could see that. Yeah, I think Drew's been hitting it out of the park lately with his promo work and just with his heel run here. I'm happy for him to get a big match at WrestleMania.
So on Monday when he does the cross-legged gimmick, so he sits down in the middle of the ring and does the crisscross applesauce on there, but he's in his kilt, right? And so the camera guy is right there, and he looks at the camera and goes, hey, perv, don't look at my skirt. Like, Drew is just nailing it, dude. He's hitting it so well. And the best part is it's that perfect kind of heel where he's a heel, but he's not wrong.
No, it's great, which is I want to see more promo battles between him and Punk. I really do. I can't wait for when that eventually happens, and I think it'll be a great match and a great feud.
I agree.
So getting back to, we have one last match. So we have the main event, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but Nia Jax in the main event of a pay-per-view or a premium live event against Australia's own Rhea Ripley for the WWE Women's Championship. And it was really cool to see Rhea, her family was in the front row, and she was over. She was definitely over. I mean, she should be. It's her home country. But
well, she's over anyways. Like, even though she's a heel, essentially, she's over as a face like crazy. And in Australia, it's even bigger.
Yeah. This will probably be the only time we see Nia Jax in a main event of a big event.
Probably. But I'll tell you what, like, this run that Nia's been on has been the best work she's done since she's been in the company.
Yeah.
Like, she's ever done.
Yeah, she didn't look bad here, I don't think.
Yeah, it's definitely one of her better matches. I will put it probably up in her top 5 best matches I've seen.
Yeah, I think they told a really good story here, and the commentary helped. Because, like, I mean, Rhea's selling was amazing here too. She really made Nia look like a monster, basically. And
she was hitting crazy spots.
Yeah, she
like stuff she'd never hit.
Yep. And I think that was also, I mean, I think the psychology of it too is like she probably needed to bust that out to beat Nia, but it was also in front of her family and her home crowd, and so she probably wanted to bust out some stuff. But I thought it was a pretty good match. If it wasn't in Australia, this would have no business being in the main event. But because it was, I think it was the right call.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Any highlights from this match you want to touch on? I mean, I know a couple, but
there was, like I said before, there was a lot of good spots in here. I was really hoping to hear a my whole.
I thought they did chant that
again.
When she missed the sunset
the fans chanted.
Oh,
no, it was
or the bonsai,
the leg drop. That was the leg drop on the outside. When she went for the leg drop on the apron, because that's when that happened the first time. And but I was hoping to hear it from Nia again. But yeah, the fans started chanting it, which was great. Yeah, like just all in all, like it was very like the psychology of this match was just so good because of how big it made Nia feel, right? Because Rhea's been running through people with power, right? That's what she's been her primary like style she's been doing, and she couldn't do that with Nia until the finish. And so she's trying to do like the quick and trying to do these fancy moves and things like that. But every time she would use power, Nia would outpower her. And I just love that story. It was such a good story.
Yeah, I mean, Rhea kept trying to hit that riptide, get her up for it. And the commentary was great here because they kept like Corey Graves was like, "What are you doing? It's impossible. Why even try for it?"
Yeah, you're never gonna hit it. Never gonna hit it.
Until she did. But
yeah. Which then the crowd blows up because she tried a couple times and couldn't do it, but finally was able to do it and overcome it. It's the WrestleMania 3 body slam with Hogan.
For sure. And they also did a spot on the outside through the table. It didn't break the first time. And so Nia Jax
called audible
and put her through it with an elbow drop off the like one of those rolling chairs.
Yeah, I was terrified when she got on the chair. I'm like, oh, don't do it off the chair.
Yeah. But all in all, and Rhea Ripley wins with the Riptide and gets a big monster ovation from the crowd and sends the fans home happy. Any other thoughts on this match?
No. Again, I thought it was one of the better ones for Nia. I thought it was an interesting display for Rhea, but not one of her better matches, if that makes sense. She sold the crap out of everything. She was playing the face in this match, which was different from what she normally does. And which is fine because like a heel match, someone's always going to be more of the sympathy. But I don't know. It's just it was good, but it could have been better. But I don't know how.
By somebody more talented than Nia Jax being in the match, perhaps.
Possibly, but then it's a different match. It's a different story.
This would have worked out great instead of Nia Jax if it was like someone like Awesome Kong. It would have been a lot better.
Yeah, like honestly, 100%. Like somebody like Awesome Kong or ODB from something in that vein.
Yeah, that would have. I mean, that's really the story they were trying to tell. I just think Nia. I mean, she's in that spot because she's the only one that physically, looks like they could manhandle Rhea, and that's pretty much it. That's probably why they rehired her too for this run. But
yeah,
but all in all, wasn't bad. the show itself, for just a B pay-per-view, even though it was mostly predictable with all the matches, the right people went over. And so sometimes that's all you need to get you to WrestleMania.
And with the fans and everything else in the presentation, it felt like a bigger pay-per-view than it was, like bigger than a B pay-per-view.
Right.
It did suck for a lot of people having to be up at 2. I was in a car driving to working the show, so I was already up, so it was not a problem for me to watch it.
Did you watch it live? Okay, I did not. I watched it later. I watched it later in the afternoon the next day. So
I watched it in the car as we were driving down. For the most part, I had to catch back up on the last match, the Nia and Rhea match, because my signal on my phone went out. But
you guys were in the car at like 2 a.m.?
Yeah, dude, we were. So they had worked the show in Roy until 11, and then Kim got me, and we drove down. We were in
that makes sense.
The Knabish area, so southern Utah. By the time I started watching the pay-per-view,
that makes sense.
So
yeah,
we rolled up.
But I'm excited.
We rolled up in the Phoenix by like 10:30. Ate some food real fast, and then had to hurry up, like clean up ourselves, get ourselves ready, and then run over to go to the seminar we were going to go do before the show. Like, we didn't get any sleep.
It makes me tired just thinking about it.
Oh man, I'm still feeling it, man.
Yeah, but WrestleMania should be good.
I'm excited, man. But with all that being said, guys, let us know what you guys think of this show. What was your favorite match, right? Let us know who you guys think should be going against Gunther in WrestleMania. Reach out to us on our social medias. That is going to be Be Hero Media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and soon to be TikTok. And you can also reach out to us at BeHeroMedia.com for everything that is Be Hero Media. You can also reach out to me directly on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Mike Burke DCW or Mike Burke Pro on Twitter, because Twitter hates me. You can reach out to Psycho at Psycho Wrestling on the Facebooks. And then upcoming shows for DCW. We have one coming up in just a little over a week. It will be our Match Madness, and that will be on March 9th, I believe. Let me verify. Pretty sure it's March 9th. March 9th, yep. We'll be doing Match Madness at Light Tree Studios. I am super excited for this. It's going to be the return of QT Marshall. He'll also be doing a seminar for any wrestlers, refs, or managers anywhere nearby. Want to come out to that. His seminar is only $80. But for your regular tickets, you can get your tickets online at Devotion Championship Wrestling, Facebook and Instagram, at Devotion Wrestling on TikTok, and DCW Salt Lake City on Twitter. Tickets for front row are $25. Everything else is $20 for that show. We will also be going back to Tussle Time on May 11th. That'll be up at Kamikazes. And then also we will be at FitCon April 12th and 13th at the Mountain America Expo Center. All the information for that and tickets, again, on our social medias. All right, Psycho, anything else?
Nope, I think we're good.
Sounds great. Well, guys, for the rest of Be Hero Media, he is Psycho, I have been Brian, and this is us tapping out. Have a good night, guys.